So now let's talk about the linear pattern, and here I have this 3D drawing in which I just have this one simple slot. Let me just bring it here first, and you can see that we do have this one simple slot and we want to make multiple copies of this right along this 3D drawing. Now to do that, I'll go to features, and here we have the pattern option. So we need to start with linear pattern. There are several other options which we'll see in a moment, but first let's start with linear pattern. And here we have the linear pattern option. Now the first thing here is direction, and there are two different ways of selecting a direction in SolidWorks. So you can select direction using single edges. So in this case you can just select this edge kind of like this, or maybe this edge. Any edge is just fine, or you can select a plane. Now when you select an edge, SolidWorks will use that line as the direction. However, if you select a plane, for example in this case I'll use this plane, then the direction will be perpendicular to this plane. So whatever the perpendicular direction is, which is obviously this one, that's going to be the direction. Alright, so that's our direction 1, which is selected now. And the next thing is spacing and instances. So I'll just leave this one selected for now. And then we have gap between patterned object, which is 10 mm. I'll leave that as well, and number of objects 7. So with these default options, I'll now go to direction 2. Let's expand this one, and for direction 2 I'll select this plane. Alright, and that's the direction 2. There it goes, that's direction 1. Now as you can see, the arrow is pointing in this direction and this one, so it is not the direction that we actually want, so we just need to reverse it. And to do this, I'll go to this direction 1 and I'll click here, and the direction is reversed. Now the pattern will be made in this direction. Similarly for direction 2, I'll reverse it simply by clicking here. Okay, that's also done. Again, we have a spacing and instances selected. I'll leave that one selected for now. Then here we have features and faces. Now here I will select the feature which we want to pattern, and in this case I just want to pattern this cut extrude. So I'll select it from the feature tree. And there we are. Now the cut extrude is selected, and we do see just one pattern which is really very far from this original one, and that's because of the distance. So let's fix it. So I'll go to the first distance, which is 10 mm, and I'll make it 1 and tab key. There we are. I'll go to distance 2, I'll type 1 and tab key. There also we have got spacing fixed. Now add number of objects here. So maybe I'll just add, well, 6 rows here. And maybe we just need to reduce this, so 0.8 is the gap now. All right, I think we should make it 0.7. all right, that looks better. So that's 0.7 between all of these patterned objects. Now in this direction 1, I'll increase this value, so I'll just make it 1.6, and I'll decrease number of objects. I'll make it 6. Oops, here it is. So it is 6. Now I think we can make it 1.4 as well, or maybe 1.5. okay, there we are. That looks just about good, so I'll just leave this value, though you can even just change it further, 1.46 maybe, and that looks way better. And there we are. We have got this simple pattern very quickly. So in this case you just don't need to make every single one of these grooves, so you can just make one and then use these pattern tools to just create it directly like this. Now there are also many other options that we'll explore before we just finish this one, and one of those options is this one, pattern seed only. Now when you check this box, pattern seed only, SolidWorks will only create a pattern using your main feature. So in this case the main feature was this, and it will only create a pattern in both the directions using that feature. It will ignore every other feature copies. However, if you just uncheck this, it will create a proper pattern using its copies as well. So this is the pattern seed feature. Now let's just finish this one for now. I'll click here, and here's the pattern. Now to edit this pattern again, go back to linear pattern and select edit feature. Now in this case, let's skip some of these instances. So in this case, every single one of this is selected. So I'll just go to this one, instances to skip, expand this one. And here we now have all these pink dots, and using these pink dots, you can skip some of these instances. So let's just go to maybe these instances here, these two, and from here I'll just skip these two. So that's going to give it kind of a different look here. And with these instances skipped, just click OK, and there we are. We have got this pattern again. So in this way you can skip the instances. All right, now let's go back to this pattern and let's make this pattern again using completely different options. So first I'll go to this direction 1 and I'll just clear the selection here. So right click, clear selection, direction 2, right click, clear selection, and here also features, clear selection. All right, now let's just do it again. So I'll start with direction 1, and of course I'll select the same plane for direction 1, but in this case, since we've already selected the plane, let's now go to an edge. Here, that's the direction 1. For direction 2, I'll select this edge. All right, so we've got both the directions selected. It looks like this arrow is pointing correctly, but not this one. It's pointing here. So I just need to reverse it. So I'll click here, and now we have the proper direction. Okay, so these two things are done. Now, in the previous example, I selected spaces and instances as the option, but now I'll select up to reference. Okay. Now, before we select the reference, we just need to select the feature that we want to pattern. So let's go to feature, and you know the feature, which is cut extrude feature, this one. All right, so cut extrude feature is selected, and it looks like we are getting the same old pattern because of all the other options which are similar, but let's just fix it. So I'll go to up to reference, I'll click here, and now select a reference plane. In this case, the reference plane will be this one. So now that we have selected a reference plane, this is the direction and reference plane is this, the pattern will be made only up to this plane. Now in this case, you can specify distance between instances of this, or you can also specify number of objects. So I'll select this number of instances, which happens to be 6 now, and with 6 instances we are getting this kind of pattern, which is obviously not the right one because it is obviously just going outside this complete body. So we need to ensure that it is well within this plane. Now we've already selected this as a reference, so now we can specify an offset distance that will keep it inside this. So here is the offset distance. Go to this and specify a distance. So maybe I'll use a distance of 0.5 and maybe not 0.8. And it looks like now, or how about 1? Okay, that's perfect. So with the distance of 1 unit, now it looks kind of perfect. The thing is, once you select a reference, SolidWorks will let you select an offset distance as well. Now in this case, we selected a reference, and that's why we'll get pattern only up to this plane. Now in the previous example, it was selecting the midpoint of this pattern. So from midpoint to midpoint of this plane, it was just making it properly like that. But now when I added this offset distance, it will add an offset of 1 unit. So now the gap between this selected plane and center point of this pattern is 1 unit. So that's the offset distance which you can add to create this kind of gap between the patterns. Okay, and currently the offset gap is calculated from centroid because that's what we have selected. And you can also select this option, selected reference, and you can specify a reference on the seed object, and then everything will be calculated with respect to that point, which we don't want. So I'll just select centroid here. Okay, so that's direction 1. Now let's do the same thing for direction 2. So I'll just scroll down, and first I'll skip all of these. So all these skipped instances, I'll just select them all, and I'll just delete all of these. So select, clear selection. There we are. So that we have everything here. Now let's go to this direction 2, and here also I'll select up to reference. And here also we can now specify a reference. So again, I'll select this plane as a reference. All right, now the pattern will be made only up to this plane. And in this case also, you can specify the gap, which is already specified, which is 0.7 mm. Let's not do that. Let's change it to number of objects. And as soon as I did that, look at this. Once again, it looks like it is just moving the centroid right here. So centroid is right on that plane. Again, you can add an offset distance. So let's do it. So the offset distance that I'll be adding here is 1 unit again, and it is kind of big. So 0.5, and there we are. Now the gap between this plane and the centroid of this last pattern is 0.5, and it will maintain this gap. So now it is using this plane as a reference, and we have got this pattern. So this is just another way of creating this linear pattern. Any of these methods is just fine as long as it suits the requirements of your part and its design intent. So with these options, I'll click OK, and here we are. We have got the linear pattern.